Welcome back to the Backwards History Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Will, here with my co-host, Kevin. Say hi, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
Shut up, Kevin.
It's going to be a short episode.
I can deal with it.
See you guys next week.
Well, this is going to be the Backwards History Podcast version of Fun with Flags, as you may know from a popular network show, but we're not going to mention it here. If you don't know, I'm sorry. But today we want to talk about the history of the American flag, the Pledge of Allegiance, and the national anthem. I'm going to go ahead and let Kevin take off with the history of the flag and its many changes. But before we get into that, I want to say a big thank you to Mike Ramsey Music for our intro and outro music.
Mm-hmm.
Also want to plug our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Oh, and our YouTube. Backwards History or some form of that. You'll find it if you search it. But go ahead and get on with the flag changes, Kevin.
All right. Now, as we all know, the United States started out as a loose association of 13 colonies under the yoke of Great Britain, and all that fun stuff. Now, most people associate the first flag as being designed by Betsy Ross. It has the 13 stars, and that represents the 13 individual colonies that came together to form what would eventually become the United States. Now, there's no documentation that proves Betsy Ross actually designed the first flag.
It just has a nice ring to it.
Right. She never got credit during her life.
Well, I guess we need to credit who Betsy Ross was.
A seamstress during the Revolutionary War. She had ties to Washington and other elite families at that time, if you will. And so her name is, associated during that time period. But the flag itself was, it was commissioned by the Continental Congress. You got to have some kind of banner to fly, something to unite the people, if you will. But it's not till 1870 that her descendants, her family, starts making the claim that, oh no, Betsy Ross designed this flag. My grandmother told me that she told her way back when that she did this. And so that's where Betsy's name gets thrown into the story. Now, it's one of those things we can neither confirm nor deny because there are no surviving records from the Continental Congress during that time that who designed the flag. Now, we have a gentleman by the name of Francis Hopkins who in 1780 tried to be paid, if you will, for designing the flag, but he was told, no, there was a lot of people who had input on the flag, so you're not entitled to squat. So that kind of throws doubt on the Betsy Ross story, because it was just her family saying, oh, my aunt told me that my grandma told me that her neighbor's next door sister kind of thing, that Betsy Ross did design this flag, but there's no documentation to prove it.
What's that Spaceballs quote? Oh. My brother's cousin's uncle's former roommate.
Right.
Right.
Now, clearly, the United States has grown beyond the 13 original colonies. For those of you who don't know, there are currently 50 states, represented by 50 stars on the flag. Now, after the war with Britain and independence is won, the United States starts to grow. It's just natural. It's going to happen, right? So we start our expansion westward. There's land to the west. Hey, let's go there, right? Now, as we expand west, territories eventually apply for statehood. And once it's granted, hey, you need to update the flag. And this happens throughout the years. You admit a new state, we get a new star over and over.
We would be here for an hour if we talked about every single addition to the flag up to 48.
Up to 48. But that's just that's the formula. That's how the story goes. If we get a new state, we get a new star.
And the organization of the stars changed over time. At one point, they were all in the form of a star. They've been in the form of a rectangle like we're used to now. When they were 48, they were in a rectangle similar to what we're used to now. They were in all kinds of different configurations over the years.
Right. Now, in 1959, in January 1959, we had Alaska. And then in August of the same year, we had Hawaii. So now we have all 50.
Notice that was 59. So when when Pearl Harbor was bombed,
41.
Hawaii was not a state.
No.
Hawaii was just a territory. It was still under control of King Kamehameha. Not to be confused with the Kamehameha taught by the Turtle Hermit. And if you get that reference, I love you.
Thumbs up.
Right.
Hawaii was a territory due to sugarcane was the big one. And, being a strategic location in the Pacific. Now, after we add the states, we have to get a new flag. We got 2 new ones. We need to update it. A high school student named Robert Heft actually designed what would eventually become our current flag.
Which we did mention this once before. I think it was the 4th of July special or something we did around that time frame.
Right, we mentioned it. Now, the funniest part about this story is his teacher gave him a B- for the design. And here we are 60 years later, and this flag is literally everywhere.
Everywhere. Maybe even some of your front porches.
And this design has been on the moon, literally.
The design is still on the moon.
I mean, it's
some people would give that an air quote, but I'm not gonna.
No air quotes here. No. And if you want to know more about that,
go back to that episode too.
So that's where we get our current flag. So we discuss the origin, the evolution, and where we are currently.
What actually brought this to mind?
Mm-hmm.
I got the Band of Brothers HBO series for Christmas, and I was watching it, and there was a sticker, or I don't know if it was technically a sticker on the time. It was
Emblem.
A decal on a Jeep in the show, and I paused it just to check their accuracy, and I counted, and there's 48. There was 48 stars on that flag, and then that brought this to mind. And by the way, shout out one of our listeners. I will leave him unnamed. Thank you for sending us your copy of The Pacific. We will definitely watch it.
Much love, brother.
And we will have an episode just on that.
Oh, yeah. Maybe 2. But that's just, in this time, every election season rolls around, we get a controversy about another flag. As previous episode done on that as well. So we just kind of wanted to shine some light on other flags, and perhaps down the road we'll hit a few others. Just you never know what's gonna offend people in the future, right?
My big toe's gonna offend somebody one day.
You heard it here first.
Well, talking about the flag, I guess leads itself automatically to going to the national anthem. Because the national anthem, by the lyrics, is talking about the flag. Francis Scott Key wrote a poem. He was a lawyer.
35.
And he was a 35-year-old lawyer that was captured and was on a British ship during the Battle of what?
Was the siege of Fort McHenry?
Yes. And he wrote because he could see the tattered flag waving in the wind from out of his porthole, I guess. Since it was on a boat, it was a porthole, not a window. And obviously, if you know the national anthem, seeing if it was still standing by morning, and you could see the cannons and all that other stuff going on.
The flag was still there.
It was still there. But yeah, it was written by a 35-year-old lawyer. So not everything that's done that's American history or prominence was done by military members and things like that.
Right.
This dude was a lawyer, and this thing is saying it all, sporting events or any big gathering, the national anthem was involved.
Especially in the South.
But that wasn't always the case. That's a relatively new thing.
Right. In the grand scheme of history, it's relatively recent. You see, if you listen to several episodes, we always talk about how traditions and customs evolve over time. Now, while the poem was written by Francis Scott Key, it's later put to music.
Which, like we mentioned prior, the music is actually from a British drinking song. But we're not going to get into that today.
No, not today. But it's put the music by John Stafford Smith. And then in 1889, the U.S. Navy, like, hey, kind of like this song. Let's use it. And it grows from there. 1916, President Woodrow Wilson, he's like, hey, I think I like that song.
We're going to make this national anthem. With a capital T.
Big T. And then Congress, in 1931, boom, it's official now. Congress, after everybody else has already decided we're going to use it, Congress is like, all right, it's official. We said it's official, so it's official. You got the congressional seal of approval.
Right.
And, that's the song we have today. It starts as a poem by some dude locked up on a ship. Other dude finds it, puts a well-established music to it. The Navy grabs it. President says, let's do it. Congress gets it. And then baseball, football, other sporting events kind of start snatching it up too as a means of, uniting the people all together.
I think it was first started being used at sporting events in 1945.
Yeah, football starts, right after World War II. You got a lot of people coming home. Baby boomers start coming, Football growing in popularity. Of course, we all know baseball is America's pastime. They started using it around 1892. And it's just one of those traditions that, one group grabs it, starts using it. Other groups like, hey, they're having success with that. Let's try that. And,
But it wasn't actually made a permanent part of at least NFL games until the 1950s.
Right. Later on, you get people trying to appeal to greater masses. What are the Cowboys? America's team.
And then it became even more grandiose after 2001.
Right.
Started making big shows of patriotism at baseball and football games, which was actually on a grant program from the DOD and the Pentagon, but that'll be another episode as well. I don't want to get too far into that rabbit hole today.
Yeah, we're not going to start that one, are we?
Just know that, or at least this half of the Backwards History podcast, I'm not sure if my co-host agrees with me, that it's my very less than humble opinion, compulsory patriotism is not true patriotism.
Yes, you can express yourself as long as I agree with it.
Right.
You do it the
Patriotism that is paid for is not actual patriotism, and patriotism that has to follow a script is not true patriotism.
Very un-American.
You can only exercise your First Amendment rights as long as it's the way I feel you should exercise it.
As long as you're doing it the way I think, you're good.
Right. Is it really?
Self-expression, what's that?
Is it really your freedom of speech if your freedom of speech is only allocated to this little box?
If you do it this way, you're good.
Moving on.
We could stay on that subject for a while.
Right. Furthering the point of compulsory patriotism. In elementary school in the early 90s, of course, I'm sure long before that, but I was a child in elementary school in the early 90s, and I remember every morning before announcements or right after announcements, we had to stand up, put our hands over our hearts, and say, face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, I'm about to pick that apart in multiple spaces.
Do your thing.
Did you know? I'm sure you didn't, because I didn't either, and this one really hit me.
Oh, yeah.
The flag pledge was not written about the United States flag, okay? It was written by a communist by the name of
Francis Bellamy.
He wrote it to be used by all countries, which is fair, but all countries, and it was like, I pledge allegiance to the flag for the republic that which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Insert country name here.
Exactly. It was the fill in the blank version.
Ad lib.
But it was communist. I thought that was very interesting.
Very interesting. You're right.
And then it was changed multiple times and adopted by the United States, and later it was everything that we know it as minus the under God, and then that was added by Eisenhower.
Mhm.
Once under God was added as the motto of the United States. But I did find it very interesting. One of the portions of how you were to pledge to the flag was changed after the start of World War II.
For a good reason.
Because initially, when you stood up, you would hold your hand over your heart and you were to say, I pledge allegiance to the flag. And at the point where you said the flag, your hand was supposed to point towards the flag in a salute with your palm down.
Yeah.
What does that... Think about that. Visualize that. You can even do it if you want to, but I would not do it in public.
No.
For the same reason why they changed it at the beginning of World War II. Because it was too like the Nazi salute during World War II.
Yeah, you don't want to be doing that.
So not only was the pledge to the flag written by communists, we saluted like fascists.
Nazis.
And then we added, in God we trust, in a country with religious freedom. But I guess God is ambiguous, so I don't argue with it too much.
It's an ambiguous term.
The term God is ambiguous, so I'm not gonna split hairs on that one.
But we could.
But beyond the historical portions and the little changes, the problem I have is we pledge allegiance to the flag and for the democracy which it stands.
No, that's not
No,
right.
no, I don't think that
Yeah,
sounds right.
yeah,
For
yeah.
the commune for which it stands. No, that's not it.
no.
Oh, it's the republic for which it stands. That's right. It is my also not humble whatsoever opinion.
Not even a little.
Not even a little. I do not apologize for my opinion because opinions are like buttholes. We all have them and they all stink.
Fair point.
The United States of America is not, and this is not even air quotes, this is like bold letters. It is not a democracy. It is a constitutional representative republic. Quote me. Kevin?
No, he's right. The word democracy gets thrown around a lot, and I don't think people truly understand.
It threatens our democracy. Because we're not a democracy.
Can't-
That's one thing I hear in Congress constantly. It drives me absolutely insane.
Oh, yeah, especially with election season really getting in that last gear, you're going to hear it a lot more. The Democrats are the greatest threat to our democracy, and the Republicans are destroying our democracy. You know, these buzzwords, these things that are meant to instill fear, and oh no, they're going to change the way things are, and just. But like Will said, in actuality, we elect representatives. We all have our state representatives in government, and they're supposed to reflect the will of the people. That's a whole nother.
Oh, not even that. We have representatives called the Electoral College during presidential votes, so that places like L.A. County that has more people in it than the states of Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana put together.
That's a lot of folks.
And don't quote me on that, but I know it's at least two of the states that has more
It's close.
population than when the people of one county in one state, if by popular vote or democratic vote rather than representative republic vote, can overrule entire states of people, or what's best for one county can overtake what's best for two entire states, when we're supposed to be the United States of America,
Right.
not the United County of LA or the United City of New York or Chicago.
Right.
That's the reason for the representative republic.
And that also gets us into the two-house system. But we can cover that further on. It's that way you don't rule by mob rule, Well, more people voted this way, so that's how we're going to do it. And if 49% said one way but 51% said the other, you're leaving out half the people who voted. They're not getting their representation.
And that's why they kind of balance each other out. While the House of Representatives is done by population, like you get a certain number of representatives per capita.
Right.
The Senate, every single state gets 2.
Yeah,
so there's
the
always 100
senators,
unless of course we add a state and there'll be 2 more.
Right.
You know,
but as of
but
right now,
House it ebbs and flows with population depending on state. And then they both have differing term limits and things of that nature to offset each other's responsibilities and checks and balances. But we'll talk about term limits in another episode.
A lot.
But these are your representatives. They are supposed to act in your best interest for your state, because someone from New York can't say what's best for New Yorkers. New Yorkers may not be what's best for Mississippians, or what's best for Mississippians may not be best for North Carolinians or Californians and things of that nature. That's why we all have equal representation in one. We have population representation in the other. And then for the presidential election, we have the Electoral College.
It's all a balancing act.
It's a balancing act, and it's intentionally that way. No one's supposed to have a mob rule, and that's what true democracy is mob rule. It's the masses ruling over, or the majority ruling over the minority.
And that just on the surface, you can see how problematic that can be.
And people trying to argue we're not a true democracy because, at the poll, we don't vote 1-to-1 for every single law. That would be true democracy.
Right.
And that would be pretty tedious, considering we have so many laws being made every single day.
You'd basically be at the polling station all day, every day.
Just think of like a little, if the Constitution was a stone document. Think of someone with a chisel just sitting there constantly tapping every time they make a new law, and that's my mental representation of lawmaking in this country. No laws are getting taken away. We're just adding and adding and adding and adding,
piling on,
and we'll all be buried under it eventually.
At some point.
But that's not my point for today. As the singer Aaron Lewis of Stained in his song Country Boy, he's talking about there's 2 flags that fly above his land that really sum up how he feels. One flag flies high and proud, the red, the white, and blue. The other one has a rattlesnake with a simple statement made: "Don't tread on me, that's how I feel, and I'll take that to my grave." That's me. That's my house. Granted, I need a new American flag because my last one got tattered in a storm, but I just got a brand new "Don't Tread on Me" flag.
High quality, too.
I'll pick apart our history and stuff, but I will still gladly fly that flag outside my house because I am a proud American, regardless.
You can love your country, but that doesn't mean you love your government.
Exactly. I'm not paid for my patriotism.
Oh, no. All natural.
All natural. But as always, it's just our opinions.
That's it.
It's 2 dudes and a microphone. Don't take our word for anything. Don't think we're experts on anything. We want you to form your own opinions, do your own research, and as always, trust but verify.